did hit a few that just started. I got a call from Christian Shaw, who was going to give a presentation on the rulemaking. She's coming from Austin, Highway 35, down to 1 lane. So it's taking her a little longer. What we can do in the meantime is pull up item number 7 instead of 6. We can flip those.
Okay. So let Nick
present first, and I would buy her some time to go.
Okay. Which is still available there.
Let me see, I see Sean. So here's 1 more minute just to make sure everybody is. They may be coming in downstairs as security and such.
Oh yeah, I always take that loop. Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, the I think
Toll road.
yeah, for sure.
Boy knows what the house.
Or
Yeah. You're like, it's much more
less of that was not to be nice of traffic.
yeah.
Very simple person.
Hey, I'm with the screen.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it's just is this you?
Yeah, the fireflies thing. I don't know.
So click on the underneath the bottom.
I guess when he starts the meeting.
Let's go. I think we can go ahead and we'll just grab this up.
So we'll call this meeting to order. And I guess we'll do a roll call. Bill Mahaffey, Vice President.
Jeff Edmonds, Secretary.
Kyle at large.
Hello, is Ellen Ramos, General Manager?
Lisa, are you our attorney?
John Michael member.
All right, we have enough for a quorum, and so we'll start with item 2. Right? You want to start with public comment, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll start with public comment regarding the agenda items. Public comments are limited to in-person public comments only. Each speaker is limited to a total of no more than 3 minutes per speaker. Time limits may be restricted further by the presiding officer of the board. The right to Publicly comment prior to any agenda item being considered constitutes a public hearing for all items on this agenda. And our first public commenter is Chris Collier.
Thank you. Chris Blair, Nueces County.
Can you turn on your mic?
There you go. Chris Blair, Nueces County. Board, staff. My comments today are the CCASRD is contemplating providing drilling and production permits for the Edgar Shell Foundation's 2,400 acre property that abuts the city of Corpus Christi's western wellfield. This board approved the annexation of this property into the CCASRD in December. Prior to the approval to the annex, the Edgar Shell Foundation property, prior to the approval to annex the Edgar Shell Foundation to the CCASRD in a formal complaint was filed regarding the unlawful discharge The unlawful discharge was discovered by elevated TDS occurring unexplained upstream of the city's of Corpus Christi's eastern wellfield. Upon sample surveys of the Nueces River, the unlawful discharge was discovered and reported. Was this to artificially increase the best bed and banks data for the western wellfield application? Was it to allow increased production of the eastern wellfield? In January, the Edgar Shell Foundation submitted drilling and production permits to this board. It was stated at a later date that these permits were not administratively complete, and to date, no approval for drilling or production permits by the CCASRD has been issued. So in short, the Edgar Shell Foundation requested to be annexed into the CCASRD and to be managed by this governing body, when in fact, prior to the annexation, they were not required to be governed under any authority and could drill or produce groundwater at will. The unlawful discharge continues to date, as was illustrated in recent news videos by Chris Six expose. The same videos documented additional drilling of an additional well, all of which is now, by their very own request, under your authority. What will this board do? What will you provide them? Will you provide them drilling permits after the wells have been drilled with no input on well spacing and drawdown requirements? Will you excuse the unlawful discharges that have and continue to take place while you consider their request? Will you blindly accept their request without any study of impact? Will you accept, as already evident, the City of Corpus Christi's need for wet over conservation, preservation, and protection of the groundwater that you sit here on this board today to protect? My question to the CCASRD board is simple and short. What purpose do you provide? And just on a side note, well owners, as I'm assuming maybe y'all aren't well owners, but well owners, we have what we have. We can't make the well any better than it is. I brought y'all a bottle to share this money for y'all, and you're welcome to it. I would appreciate you trying it out, because that's what we got. Thank you.
Okay. Our next public commenter is Scott Barraza.
Good afternoon, Scott Barraza, Nueces County. Just want to make the board aware that I have an open Attorney General records complaint over a request I was told to make regarding well spacing. I asked Esteban Ramos at the January GMA what the district's well spacing was. His response was to put in a request for information. At last month's meeting in February, I again asked for clarification. No clarification was given. The records request email was not answered, but it was acknowledged. I even sent a second email saying that it has been over 10 days and we haven't a response yet. To this date, it has not been answered. In addition to that, I have another open records request regarding resignations that hasn't been clearly answered. It regarded board member resignations. It has been confirmed that you do not have to be a city employee to be a member of this board, as evidenced by the non-city employees on the board today. There are no records kept ever of any board member's resignation. In my email, I was answered and I was told that Tyler and Drew resigned with their direct supervisors. The problem is the direct supervisors are the city of Corpus Christi. This is a separate entity from the city of Corpus Christi, and by such, they should have resigned from this board. I also sent in a request to the city of Corpus Christi. In their answer, they stated that they had no record of Drew's resignation from this board. They did say that the district emailed over and said that Drew had been replaced, but there is no record anywhere of Drew's resignation. With that being said, Drew's term has not expired, so Mr. Mojave, you may not be properly seated. Because he hasn't resigned, there is no record of that resignation. You're probably not seated properly, and should probably most likely seek outside legal advice, other than the city attorneys that y'all use. Because as this district and the water controversy goes on, it's going to probably come under more scrutiny, and your position on this board will probably be scrutinized as well. The last thing I have is your well mitigation program as regard to the special conditions on the CCW well permits. I talked with Nick Tuesday. As of Tuesday, the well mitigation program was not spelled out on that special conditions. He explained what would be needed, but it was not put into it. Mr. Edmonds stated that the permits weren't considered valid because the special conditions weren't met last month. It's been over 60 days. We're going on 90+ days now. I don't know what he's going to bring you, but if that well mitigation program is not on those special conditions, those permits should be declared by the board today not valid, and pumping should cease and stop until those special conditions are met. Because after all, y'all made those conditions on yourself, and if you want us rural well owners to feel comfortable that you're going to do what you say, you should start with this well mitigation program. I was also informed that the well mitigation program would be carried out of the CCW's operational budget. Most likely, if a well owner has issues, that budget could be low. The city of Orange Grove is having issues with their well. If they were to meet the Good Neighbor program for their well mitigation on a big municipal well, we're talking $1.5 million right there. I don't believe that will leave anything left in the budget for any rural owners who have issues with their wells. It's something to contemplate. We need a well-funded, well-written well mitigation program in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next,
So, in your packet, board members, the CCW has submitted their plan pursuant to the special conditions within the permit. It's in your packages. It was also emailed to you, so for y'all's knowledge. Thank you.
our next public commenter is Kelly Harba.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Harlan from rural Oasis County. There have been multiple complaints filed regarding groundwater production on the Edward Joel Foundation property and the discharge of that groundwater into Camelot Creek. A complaint was filed in November 2025, and I personally submitted a formal complaint again on March 5th, 2026, raising issues under Texas Water Code Chapter 36, including groundwater waste, unauthorized discharge, and compliance with the county's model of edible groundwater and desired future conditions. On March 13th, the only response I received from this district was that my email was forwarded to the board. That's not an investigation, that's not enforcement. Meanwhile, the activity continued. It was documented on video numerous days and covered by the local news and it did continue until the KRS 6 news story broke. So the timeline is clear. This illegal and wasteful pumping should have been stopped by this board. Instead, it only stopped after it made the news. Groundwater was being pumped and discharged into a creek channel before the emergency bed and banks permit was issued. So the question is simple. Was groundwater being discharged to waters of the state without authorization? And if so, why did this district not act despite months of notice? Further, once this board voted to annex these well properties into the district, the groundwater production became regulated. That production must comply with the currently adopted desired future conditions and model available groundwater, not the proposed, not future, and not unapproved standards. For Nueces County, the adopted limit is 6,787 acre feet per year, and that's for the whole county, and that limit must be adhered to. The city has publicly stated that it expects to vastly exceed that limit by May. So my question to this board is direct. What is the board doing right now to prevent groundwater production from exceeding the legally adopted MAC and violating the DFC? Because under Texas law, you cannot allow production beyond those limits, and you are required to protect the aquifer for all users. And looking at today's agenda, there's nothing here about protecting groundwater, only items advancing continued well field activity. What is this board doing to protect, preserve, and conserve groundwater in Nueces County? We are watching everything that goes on. We're documenting everything that is happening here and out there. And we would encourage this board to keep its ethical obligations in mind as you are personally accountable for your decisions. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other public commenters, I guess we'll move, you want to move to item 3? Let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Or do we need to wait on that?
No, yes, so in your packets, board members, you should have, you have received an electronic copy prior to the meeting, and it's in your packet for review. This is the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. So our next item is, are we going to do which one did you want to skip again?
So all parties are here right now, so
Okay.
let's
We'll just go forward.
Yes.
All right, so our next item is discussion of bonding requirements for new board members.
Yes, so there was questions regarding the bonds. Each board member, new board members would need to receive bond requirements pursuant to the rules. We're going through that process with the new members. If you all have any questions concerning that, approximately the bond requirement is $300. The board, the ASR district would pay for that.
Okay. Is that the end of the discussion? All right.
If you all have any questions?
Okay. All right. Next item, number 5, general manager's financial report.
Yes, so the financial report is in your packages. Just to cover it, the actuals, the fiscal year 2026 actuals is reported at $15,560.08. And that's revenue totals. Expenditures, total expenditures for FY26 actuals is $24,623.06. The ending balance for 2026 FY actuals is $753,999.20. Stand by for any questions you may have on that, and that is from 10/1/2025 to 3/17/2026. And the information is in your packets.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a question. You said 753,999?
This is you at 99.
99. Okay.
And
726.
sorry about that.
All right. So our next item is Rules and Regulations Handbook update from HDR.
So at this time, I would invite Chrissy Shaw with HDR. At the last board meeting, I had informed the board that we would be looking at updating our rules under the CCASRCD, and I had invited Chrissy to introduce herself to the board and then also give a presentation on the next steps and what will be involved in the rulemaking process, because it is a process. So I'll turn it over to Chrissy Shaw this time.
Okay, thank you. My name is Chrissy Shaw, and I'm with HDR Engineering. I am a water supply planner and engineer. Been doing that for about 28 years now. 24 of those years have been at HDR. And I have been involved in regional water planning down here for that entire time. I'm the technical consultant for Region N. I've done work for the Corpus Christi ASR Conservation District now for several years. I was the project manager for the ASR study that was conducted back in 2019, for which the area has 2 permanent wells. We did some aquifer testing in support of characterizing the area and understanding better the groundwater aquifer systems. So what I'm going to be talking about a little bit today is a new contract that we have with the district. Just to give you a little bit of context, every 5 years, all groundwater conservation districts have to go through a process where they look and revisit their groundwater management plan. That was done with the district and adopted back in November of 2025. And so in response to that, we are looking now at updating rules and regulations so that they can follow in suit and be cohesive with the groundwater management plan. So there are statutory guidelines, Texas Water Code guidelines for groundwater conservation districts, and there are existing rules for the district. So my work is really focused on looking at any updates to those rules to stay abreast of the statutory requirements and any kind of changed conditions and updates that are required for the district. All right.
I may have the mouse.
I have to do it from the laptop.
Click it. Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you for your patience. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context right here. This first map is just showing the outline of the district. And as I mentioned earlier, I am involved in regional water planning. And through that, there was...
Are we sharing? Just to make sure. Okay.
Through that, there was a recent update to the regional water plan that was adopted in January of this year by the Texas Water Development Board. That information is going into the state water plan that is pending and will be released this year. This map just shows some of the groundwater projects in the area, and it's simply meant to just show that conditions are changing in this vicinity. And in the vicinity of the district. So the green line or the dark brown line represents the boundaries of the ASR Conservation District. And these are some of the main groundwater projects that are happening in the area. Why that is relevant is the district, and as part of the district's mission, goals, and objectives, it looks at managing the groundwater context and also looking at preservation and protection, subsidence issues, and so forth. And so as we move forward, it's meaningful for us to understand where there are groundwater projects and water supply needs across the basin. So based on the groundwater management plan, the district's objectives include seasonal, long-term, and emergency storage through aquifer storage and recovery. Also augmentation of beach storage capacity, improving water quality by maintaining minimum flow, and deferring expansion for some water system infrastructure needs. And that's, one of the chief benefits, I guess, of aquifer storage and recovery is that can help to postpone really expensive upgrades by giving you an opportunity for storage. Also mitigating stream flow requirements, management of storm flow and estuary salinity, and helping to meet large retail customer demands. So that was all part of the rules and regulations that were referred to in the 2016 rules. And so that's something that we're going to be revisiting and just making sure that that's consistent with kind of the goals moving forward. So additional goals are to enhance groundwater quality and protect it, to also protect the yield of the basin, to manage groundwater supplies, production and exports, and the efficiency of the district, and then other ancillary benefits along with that. So a summary of, just a very brief summary of the rule updates. There's a good amount of just administrative stuff that we're going to be addressing and making consistent with the existing regulations. But there are some limits that are set forth that we will be considering in rules as we update them. And this is information from the statutory, or the statutes and the provisions that are attached to the most recent Texas Water Code. That has to do with penalties for violations, exporting and transferring of groundwater, mainly maximums that a district can levy, petitioning rule changes, also brackish groundwater. That's a big topic for this, that's relevant for this update, is that the Texas Administrative Code and Water Code put some information in place with respect to brackish groundwater. And, oh, it's okay. Can we just go back one slide, possibly? There we go. Thank you. And they define brackish groundwater as containing dissolved minerals in the range of above 3,000 milligrams per liter. And then also with respect to management, now that the code has been reflected to give more purview from the Texas Water Development Board on how to manage and accomplish desired future conditions. And that is a process that all GCDs participate in as part of the groundwater management area. The groundwater management area that assimilates that information, determines desired future conditions for the area, and then submits that to the Texas Water Development Board. And then the board will use that information to determine modeled available groundwater, and that projects what kind of sustained yield you might expect from the system. We're also looking at rule updates with respect to joint planning, and there's just an additional provision that will be included in the rules that's based on the statutes for the interim benchmarks and the 50-year planning process. So one thing that we're going to be talking about in future meetings, not necessarily for this one, but I just wanted to introduce myself more than anything and kind of give you a taste for what to expect during the next meeting, is there are a few examples of how people handle exporting and conveyance of systems. Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District is just to the north. It encompasses a few counties like Atascosa, Carnes, Wilson, and Frio. And they have some rules that we might want to take a look at as far as precedent conditions for exporting groundwater and transfers in and out of the basin. Gonzales Underground Water Conservation District has rules as well, touching on this. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in the future. Guadalupe County Groundwater Conservation District, that is kind of in the highlighted light blue area, and that's just to the north. And they also address exporting the groundwater out of the district. So we just got started on this. In fact, I think, Steve, we had the contract signed within February or early March. And so we've done our research for the new statutory provisions that I kind of touched on a little bit. We'll be updating the rules and regulations for your consideration and seeking feedback in that April meeting moving forward. One key additional item and task that we're going to be working on is preparing a monitoring and subsidence plan and looking at that district-wide. And we're to understand that there are quite a few projects that are ongoing that have their own monitoring and subsidence plans. And so we want to be able to harness that and look at how that should be promulgated or permeated, I guess, throughout the entire district and where it's relevant. And then coordination with GMA 16. So the ASR district is part of several districts within a given area that's part of groundwater management area 16. And they had a meeting just a couple of days ago, and they meet regularly every month or two. They're in the process of revisiting their desired future conditions. So we're going to be helping to support the district and their representation with respect to GMA 16. With the next estimated completion date of having these new rules considered for adoption around May timeframe. It's okay, almost done. So in April, we're going to talk a little bit about those draft rules. Also, with respect to how to coordinate with some of the other, there is a portion of the ASR district that is co-located or overlaps with the San Patricio County Groundwater Conservation District. So talking a little bit about that in the overlap area, and as it's relevant to the Mathis well field, the city of Mathis is in the process of drilling wells, and so is the city of Beeville. And then also export rules related to well fields and transferring of water to Owen Stevens. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then defining brackish groundwater. The Texas Water Development Board already has a definition for brackish groundwater, so if there's any others that we want to kind of talk through or any modifications to that, we can do it during our next meeting in April. And then also providing some input on ways to take a look at water level monitoring and subsidence monitoring plans. There are other districts that have done that before. And it's particularly on the subsidence front, it's particularly informative in looking at some of the coastal groundwater conservation districts that have grappled with this in the past, areas like Houston and the Harris County and Harris-Galveston County subsidence district, and taking a look, for things that might be relevant in this area as, we are seeing a greater emphasis or desire to look at conjunctive use of surface water and groundwater supplies in the area. So we can get it on the ground floor and look at putting together some policies and a plan that would make sense that can be monitored over time. So this is my final slide, and there's just three kind of...
Sorry to interrupt, but no one online can see your slides. If you could link that up. I'm super sorry to interrupt.
Oh, not a problem.
So back,
There you go to the WebEx and you show your screen. You go to WebEx, and show your screen. And go on the chat for it. The other one, Joe. You do on the go down to the WebEx. Go on WebEx. And then go to the screen on, click it, and go to the screen on the right. It's right there.
yeah, see
Oh,
that?
right here.
Now just share your screen.
And then,
And then pick that screen right there. There you go.
No, share.
Right there.
Can you see it now? Is it visible? Okay, great. My apologies for that.
oh, I'm sorry, that's
And if there are any things or items that I've already gone through that we want to go back to, I'm happy to do that as well. So the three questions that we have for the district is part of the rules and the update. We'll be looking at ways to provide an opportunity for stakeholder outreach and education and input. And so we'll be wanting to get y'all's thoughts with respect to that. The timeline and the progress of GMA 16 and their process to revisit the DSCs and NAGs. How does the district want to engage in that process? And I know that you're very active already in the GMA 16 process. So the question would be, is there anything additional that you need in terms of support or data to be able to participate in that? And then the frequency of coordination with the Groundwater Conservation District in San Patricio County for the overlap area, and what types of aspects need to be reflected in the rules. And with that, that's all that I have prepared. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask some questions of me and anything else that you'd like to talk about.
So at this time, would you stop sharing? We'll come back.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Christian. So you mentioned some of these other examples, Guadalupe County, Carolina Conservation District, Evergreen, Gonzales County. Do any of these other districts line up with the situation that we've got, where we're going to have groundwater coming from two different groundwater conservation districts as being treated and distributed back to the different areas? When we take water from Sandbat, we'll be treating it and we distribute treated water back over there.
Well, from the perspective of the groundwater, I would say Gonzales County, they have well fields there that send water over to San Antonio. And so it basically sends water out of the basin. It doesn't go back, but from the perspective of the groundwater,
There's just one way.
Right. And then for some of these other counties, there isn't the two-way street like that. But I think that what would be an important consideration is looking at infrastructure that may be going over other conservation districts and kind of seeing what has been done in the past with respect to that and what the host, I guess, the Groundwater Conservation District has done. I think Gonzales County would be one that would be applicable for that. Good question.
I have a question. So I know the Gulf Coast Aquifer kind of extends over to the Houston area along the coast. And I think a lot of people are, there's a lot of information from different sources about the confining, clay layers and how they, we're drilling in a zone below what the normal domestic well would take. And so I guess y'all have experience with groundwater in those other Gulf Coast aquifer regions, right? Because our aquifer down here is a lot different than what it would be up in the hill country, right?
Absolutely.
And, the recharge zones are different, the confining layers, everything's different about it. So I don't know if there's some way you can, give us a little history on how those Gulf Coast aquifer zones have worked in those areas where they've historically been utilized for, the larger scale water projects. And then also, if any information that we know about our confining layers here as it, relates to those and how they how that meshes together, and just for the public to have some clarity on that.
Absolutely. So the Gulf Coast Aquifer System is heterogeneous. Like it's It's got a good amount of irregularity to it, which is good and bad. Really, it's very unique in its characteristics in that you can have an area that has a lot of clay in it and confinement, and then you can go a mile away from that or 2 miles away and see completely different aquifer conditions. So during the next meeting in April, I'm happy to present some information that we gathered from the data near the airport. Here, that was where we did the exploratory testing and evaluation, and we went down around 650, 700 feet, and we characterized the Gulf Coast aquifer. That was both the Chico and the Evangeline aquifer, and we looked at the hydraulic properties and information about the mineralogy. What we found there is it's kind of like Plinko. I don't know if you guys remember The Price is Right, and the game where you drop the puck and it kind of pokes around. That's what we were finding. Originally, we thought, this area might not have the kind of production that we're expecting, because there's a good amount of data that shows salinity, high salinity levels or brackish groundwater, but then on top of it, pretty low production, which you can see with the existing registered wells. They're not really high yielding or producing. But we were really pleasantly surprised to find that there was a little bit more going on there. And we also looked at the hydraulic correlation with a nearby well, and we're able to determine some storage coefficients and kind of aquifer data, which is really helpful. We did see that confining layer, but we also saw that there was, once you were pumping that water, there were quite a bit of sands that were kind of in this Plinko zone where you were pulling from, and it produced a lot more water than what we thought. So I'm happy to present some of that information, and it kind of helps to characterize the area. One thing I will say is that part of the subsidence challenges that Houston has seen over time has been as a result of sustained groundwater use for many, many, many decades. And what happened is that essentially the mining of those aquifer systems over many decades changed the clay in such a way that it kind of sits down instead of it being perked up. It's like it takes a nap and then it compresses. And that compression created land surface subsidence. And there's a few communities along the coast that really saw the brunt of that. So there are ways to mitigate that, and I guess it's one of those situations where someone's folly can often be someone else's benefit, and that you look at that and say, oh wow, like back in the day, like nobody knew, right? And so now there are systems in place to understand that a little bit better, and they've been able to reduce their groundwater pull and really see a handful of conditions where they're seeing a bit of relaxation of that, but they're certainly stopping like future subsidence. So those kind of lessons learned, I think, give us a bird's eye view on things that can be done on the district level to really be mindful in managing those situations moving forward.
Well, it seems like it's kind of a give and take, because if it's not as confined, then you get more recharge, right? Whereas if it is a confined layer, then your recharge zone maybe, several miles away, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah, I would be curious into looking at that, and also like water volumes, because I know I looked at some of the research, and like for instance on the western well field, I saw some maps that showed that it was 400-foot thick aquifer, and it seems like that's a lot of water when you start adding up the numbers. But then also I was going to ask if we're talking about different groundwater districts, and then we do need to make sure that the areas that aren't under groundwater district and the people that are there are protected as well. So I don't know if that's going to be included in any kind of monitoring in that surrounding area on this study. So, because we have some zones that are in areas that don't have a groundwater district currently.
So what you're asking is, what can be done by the district to go into those areas that are outside the district to protect the water
Or
users?
just a plan to see how we're gonna, I mean, I guess if we're monitoring it on the outside edges of the areas in our groundwater district, we'll kind of know that that'd be the worst case scenario nearby the wells, but just kind of understand how that correlates to the effects on other rural residents.
And that certainly can be included as a consideration for the monitoring plan and subsidence plan.
Okay. Oh, John, do you have any questions? I think there's
No, I'm good. I learned many years ago when you're a new member on a board, you sit down, you shut up, and you listen.
Okay, good advice. And, all right, so, thank you.
Sure. That can help.
So our next item is the Eastern and Western Wellfield permit activities update from CCW. If we can.
So, we're not sharing.
Wait, I'm not sharing.
So we're back to the receipt on my picture.
Yeah.
Maximize.
Wait.
You're on. There you go.
Okay, and then I hit
Share.
share. And then hit share.
Go back to the PowerPoint.
This is the PowerPoint.
Then we're going to bring up CCW's PowerPoint. So stop sharing for a second.
Okay, stop
Okay.
sharing.
Okay, now click on the PowerPoint. Click on his.
Yes, right?
Yes. And then hit your slideshow. Exactly.
But I'm not sharing.
Okay. Now go back to the web.
Okay.
Okay. Maximize. No. Go
No.
Go back to the.
Right here. I'll share the screen. Share. And right here, right?
And share.
And share. And then selection.
Give it a second. Minimize that. Bring that to the bottom. And
All right, John, can you see that?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Nick Winkleman, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Corpus Christi Water. It's a pleasure to be here on this great day. Now that baseball season has started again, life is good. So, and I'm sorry, my microphone wasn't on. I'll start over. Nick Winkleman, Chief Operating Officer of Corpus Christi Water. Today, the intent is to give this board an update on the city's activities associated with the Nueces County Groundwater Program. That's also known as the Eastern and Western Well Fields. Next slide, please. Okay, just as a reminder, this Corpus Christi Water mission statement is to provide the highest quality water and wastewater services that exceed regulatory requirements and serve the region. We do this by upholding the highest standards, providing innovative solutions, leading strategic initiatives, and prioritizing continuous improvement. And I am proud to be one of the 600 employees of Corpus Christi Water who work every day to do the right thing and serve the community. Next slide. Our community is much bigger than the city of Corpus Christi. The community that Corpus Christi Water serves is approximately 500,000 people, and it's in 7 different counties. The strategic goal of Corpus Christi Water in regards to water supply is to diversify our supply. The diversification of the supply will consist of utilizing surface water, groundwater, wastewater reuse, and seawater. Next slide. One of the challenges that we are faced with is this historic drought. We are in an approximate 5-year drought. Shown on the slide is what the National Weather Service calls the drought monitor, drought outlook. You can see the coastal Bend region is squarely in an area where drought continues to persist. Next slide. It's a graphic from the National Weather Service that we received on Monday. This details the rain that has fallen in the state of Texas over the last 7 days. It's a very unexciting slide. There is 0 rain fallen in the state of Texas in the last 7 days. That was since on Monday. They had an additional slide, which I won't show you, but on Monday they predicted that 0 rain would fall in the state for the next 7 days as well. Hopefully that doesn't come true. Next slide. One thing that we talk about is our surface water, and all of this is meant to paint the picture for all of you so that you understand why it's so important for us to diversify our water supply. Cotulla, Texas is located within our watershed. As you can see, since 2020, we have been well below the annual rainfall amount in that area, causing significant impacts to stream flow and inflow into our reservoirs. Next slide. Which is why we are moving as we can to diversify the water supply. Our Oasis groundwater program consists of 2 well fields. We refer to them as the eastern well field and the western well field. They are shown on this map so you have an idea of perspective and geographic location. Next slide. A little bit about the hydrogeology, and it's great to see Christy Shaw here today. I think I love listening to her, and we both love talking about the Gulf Coast aquifer, I can tell you that for sure. So the formations that the city's wells that are targeting in both the eastern and western well field are the lower Chico and the upper Evangeline. So it's also known as the Willis and the upper Goliad. There is some better water quality higher in the formation, shallower water, and I'll show you how the city has decided in terms of mitigation to bypass that water, and I will explain why. Next slide. When we began developing the concept of these well fields, we first looked at the hydrogeology of the area. Then the next step was to look at wells within the area. This is a blow-up of the western well field. You can see it's outlined in red. What we asked our team to do is to plot all the wells that target formations that are deeper than 500 feet. What we found is the majority of the wells in the area target the upper formations about 250 to 300 feet. As you can see, it's very hard to find wells that target in the area lower than 500 feet. In fact, the 2 wells on the north part of the property were initially drilled by the city of Corpus Christi. And they have both been properly plugged and abandoned. The one on the top left, we located it and properly plugged that as part of this project. Next slide. Additionally, with every single well that is drilled, we conduct geophysical logging. That is done in an effort to determine, just like Mr. Mahaffey said, to determine where those clay confining layers are. We want to utilize those clay layers to our advantage and to help us separate our production zones from the area local residential and livestock wells. Every single well has a pilot hole drilled and a geophysical log is conducted. Those logs are all available. because we want to make them available to the public so that people like Christy Shaw can continue to study the Gulf Coast aquifer. They're available on the securingwater.corpuschristitx.gov website. Next slide. This is the typical designs of both the eastern and western well fields. You can notice that there is an outer, well, there's an outer larger casing that is typically set to approximately 40 to 50 feet. It's typically referred to as a conductor casing. But then an outer casing is installed that's 20-inch diameter. That is typically set to a depth of approximately 500 feet. In fact, in the western well field, the average depth of that casing is 515 feet. The annular space around that casing is pressure cemented to seal off our targeted formations from the upper formations. The production screens are then placed between 500 and typically 800 feet. Next slide. As most of you know, we've contracted with Intera Incorporated to continue our hydrogeologic modeling. That effort continues. After each well is drilled, the geophysical logs and the pumping tests, the production tests are sent to Intera, where they continue to refine their model. And then additionally, at this point in time, we have 5 monitoring wells in the eastern well field. We have 4 monitoring wells in the western well field with additional wells planned. In fact, Intera has provided me just this week with potential locations for new monitoring wells in the western well field so that we can better characterize the sites and provide them with better data to update their models. The other part of our monitoring program consists of the voluntary program. We are requesting that residential well owners and livestock well owners work with the city so that we can take some baseline data of their wells and share it with them. I've got multiple slides on that, and I can share that with you going forward. You'll see it in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. We know strongly that we need to be cognizant of the potential for subsidence. We have worked with Intera to develop a plan. Recommendations from them have come in, and they are to include 3 permanent subsidence monitoring stations on the western well field and 1 permanent subsidence monitoring stations in the eastern well field. As a side note, Intera was the prime contractor for the Harris-Galveston Subsidence District, and they have developed the best management practices to assess subsidence in the state of California. We're utilizing their experience in both of those areas to ensure that we're not just doing the best management practices, but to go above and beyond. And I do appreciate Ms. Shaw's talking about the city of Houston and the length of time that they were using groundwater. So the city of Houston, they started utilizing groundwater in the late 1800s. Certainly at times they were operating well over 100 wells, probably close to 150 wells. It was a significant amount of water being withdrawn from the Gulf Coast aquifer, and for a significant amount of time, especially when you consider it well over a century. So let's talk more specifically about the eastern well field. I apologize, the slide may be hard to see. The blue circles are existing wells. Those are the wells that we have constructed. The teardrop shapes are the existing monitoring wells. If you look at, so there's 2 isolated locations. The first one is on the far left of the screen. They're single well locations. That is well 1. And then sort of in the net working from left to right, the next one is well 4. And then you get to, there is a grouping of wells, or the well field for the eastern site. There's a number of wells grouped there. What I can tell you with our monitoring water level data is the monitoring wells have remained, the depth of water below ground level, anywhere between 2 to 4 feet, has remained fairly consistent. I do want to bring up the fact that when you're looking at such shallow water and such minor changes in water levels, you start to think about things like barometric pressure. Believe it or not, barometric pressure can change the water levels in a well. So when we talk about water levels in a well and fine tune it over time, and you start talking about a foot of water, there's a lot of different factors there, including measuring and accuracy as well. All that I say is I had a conversation with multiple well owner in San Patricio County. He was showing me his data and his monitoring well. Throughout the course of 3 or 4 months, it adjusted 1 to 2 feet. He was very concerned about that, and I told him we shouldn't be too worried about that, because that could just be monitoring inaccuracy. You're starting to get to really fine-tuned numbers. Western well field, please. So same approach. Oh, and then there is a picture for both well fields. So again, the eastern well field will have 1 permanent subsidence monitoring location. The western will have 3. An example picture of that is shown on the right. We are moving forward with that, and at my next update, I will update the board on those locations. So same setup on the western well field. We have permanent wells. Those are the solid blue circles. Not all the wells are drilled yet. Not all of them are complete. We have monitoring wells also on this site. There are additional monitoring points off-site. So what I can tell you about the monitoring of those wells is the depth to the water from the surface has ranged from 25 to 23 feet. The 25-foot depth was actually a reading that we took before we started pumping, and the 23 feet was after. So again, it just sort of highlights, like I would call that essentially the same water level. I wouldn't get caught up on it came up 2 feet or went down 2 feet. The monitoring well that is off-site, prior to pumping, it was 53 feet, and after pumping, it was 52.5 feet. Again, those are relatively the same numbers. Our conclusion is, and we continue to monitor in those, but the monitoring water levels have remained consistent in the western well field both before and after pumping. And the next slide, we can get into what we are pumping. Eastern well field is complete. The production from that well field over the last 7 days has averaged 4.47 million gallons a day. The western well field, and shown on the picture, is the outfall of the western well field. So we received a temporary bed and banks permit on March 18th of 2026. We started pumping water the next day. Currently, the well field is producing approximately 5.7 million gallons a day. We're expecting to have 4 to 5 wells online by the end of March and 6 wells online by mid-April. The full well field is planned to be in operation by May of 2026. The operational protocols of both sites are based on the TCEQ bed and banks permit. Pumps are also adjusted to adjust for current conditions, maintenance, and overall operational efficiency. I would like to reiterate that the number of wells doesn't mean we are running all those wells at the same time. There's built-in redundancy, and there are times when we will operate specific wells for specific reasons. For example, in the eastern well field, well 1, that has a little bit higher TDS than the other wells, so we don't run that well as often. The wells will be continued to be monitored to determine when well rehabilitation is required. So just as a reminder for everyone, wells should be rehabilitated every 5 to 7 years. That would be removal of the well pump. You would do a downhole video survey. You would inspect the condition of the well screens. And you may need to do some sort of rehabilitation, which might include mechanical cleaning or other methods. So CCW has to monitor that and ensure that we continue to take care of these wells. Next slide. So these are just pictures, graphics taken from our website. So this is a voluntary well field monitoring program. These are things that CCW offers those who would like to participate at no cost. So there's an assessment of their well. We'll review their construction. We'll take initial measurement readings of the water level. We'll take water quality samples. Those will include tests for total coliform, E. coli, dissolved solids, chlorides, nitrite, nitrates, sulfates, arsenic, and uranium. The lab results will be official. They're from a state-certified lab, and all of that data will be provided to the homeowner. How does that help both the homeowner and also CCW? It helps us better understand the aquifer. It helps us understand what's happening and what we can be done to adjust any operating protocols, if any. For all of those listening, the phone number to contact us to join this program is 361-826-1600. Next slide. Recently, I was approached by someone who asked me, well, what if data is reported by the homeowner and then brought to CCW to review and analyze just in case there is potential issues with their well? Well, this is the list of the data that would be needed, and this is the information that CCW would collect and provide. But if well owners wanted to do it for themselves, they should look at historic and current static water levels, historic and current pumping water levels, of course report the dates. They should understand their well construction information, total depth of their well, diameters, where their production screens are at. They should understand historic and current production, typically it's referred to in gallons per minute, the date of the last pump maintenance, the date of any or the last well rehabilitation, and then also historic specific capacity calculations versus current specific capacity calculations. Again, if anyone is interested, it's 361-826-1600. With that, I'll stand by if the board has any questions.
Nick, I have one too. How many folks do we have signed up?
So it's less than 20. It's about 18 or so. We have seen an uptick over the last couple of weeks, which is good. And I say uptick, so that's people, but some people have multiple wells. So that's good. We're working to improve our outreach. But it's a voluntary program, so if people don't want to utilize the service, that's up to them. All we can do is make it available to people.
Now, I'm guessing that if they're in the program, it's probably going to facilitate any kind of claim that they make for the impact. It's going to establish a baseline.
I think it's very good for, it makes the validation of any potential claim much easier, that's for sure. I do want to remind this board that Corpus Christi Water is an enterprise fund, so all of our operational activities are funded by water rates. We have a fiscal responsibility to ensure that all claims are properly vetted. I assure you that CCW will address any claims or any issues that are impacted by the well field, but I do have to properly vet it. because of the fiscal responsibility this department has to the 500,000 people who we serve.
So, following up on that, so help me understand what this looks like. Let's say I'm in the well monitoring program, and we can document that I've been negatively impacted by this, and I want you to help make me whole. What does that look like?
So it depends on the impact. So if there is say it was documented that a direct result of our pumping resulted in a decreased water level that affected the production from your well, one item is potentially lower the well pump, set it a little deeper to ensure that nothing breaks suction. I mean, and that could go up to potentially drilling another well or so. I will tell you this, we haven't validated any negative impacts yet. Now I know we just started pumping the western well field. However, I feel extremely confident there because we haven't seen any change in our monitoring water levels. The other interesting fact is, I was in San Patricio County yesterday at a town hall that we conducted, and one well owner came up to me and explained how his well went dry, and we needed to mitigate that for him because we were pumping water from the Evangeline Groundwater Project. I explained to him that we haven't even drilled any wells on the Evangeline Groundwater Project. And then at that time, he requested information on a professional pump installer to contact. Additionally, in some of our other well fields, we had complaints that their well was suffering from a decrease in water level, specifically in the Blunster area. We had 3 or 4 folks, but at that time, we hadn't been pumping any wells there either. So it's just important. We want to keep talking to people so everyone understands. Wells seem simple, but they're not, and we want to help all of those involved in the program to understand the asset that they own.
I've got one more related question, and this is in response to some of the comments we had in public comment. So let's say that we can demonstrate that my well has been impacted and that you're in agreement with that. Mm-hmm. Do you have the financial wherewithal? Do you have the ability to get your hands on the resources to be able to mitigate that impact?
We do. So we have we have an operational budget. We have developed a new org within that budget, which is our wellfield operations org. So as this is all just started, it wasn't included in last year's operating budget, but we do have operational funds that can be used to that fact, and we have them set aside. The next year's operating budget will have both in that the wellfield board will have both maintenance and mitigation line item, which will consist of maintenance and operation of our well pumps, potentially well rehabilitation if needed, and then any specific mitigation efforts for potentially affected well owners.
So this mitigation program that you're in, do any other public utilities do this? Because it sounds like it might be a little bit abnormal.
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it sounds like it's good that we're going above and beyond, but just curious if any other water systems even offer that opportunity.
But I can honestly say that in my opinion, the design of this well field from the very beginning has gone above and beyond The design of the wells were more costly. We sacrificed availability of some water and availability of some better quality water. All of this to do a good job and ensure that we're not impacting area wells. And that's why I always say the mitigation started with the design of the well field. That's when we started the mitigation.
And not to mention that we're probably the only water system in Texas that doesn't rely on some groundwater. And we happen to be in the driest watershed in Texas.
You're exactly right.
So, is anybody on the, John, you have any?
Well, yeah, I talked to Steve Ramos, actually chatted some emails with him the other day. Nick, first off, good job as always. I know you got a tough job and you know, Mother Nature's dealt us a pretty tough hand here. When we started these wells along the river for emergency purposes only, you know, that's what we did in the 80s, and it helped us get through that drought. And I know what we're doing now is going to help us get through this drought. What I'd like to see, and maybe you have it now, maybe it's in production, but did Steve Young, and really more on the Western well field and then moving in the future to the Ed Rochelle well field, has Steve modeled, like we did for Evangeline, over a period of time, if you produce these wells at a given capacity, what would be the impact of drawdown? What would be the impact of subsidence? And as you know, the modeling that was done for Evangeline, Steve did that over a short period of time, 2 to 5 years. Then he did it over a intermediate period of time of 20 years, and then ultimately pumping those wells full-time production over a 30-year period. And we were able to see what those impacts of drawdown would be. Has that been completed on the West well field? And are you going to have that done on the Rochelle property prior to drilling?
John, thank you for those comments. I appreciate that, and thank you for the question. So, Steve Young, who works for Intera, continues to update what we refer to as the model for the Nueces County well fields. It includes both the eastern well field and the western well field. We just finished, we just completed a pumping test on one of the wells today, and that information will be sent to him also. So he continues to update that model and refine the data and the estimates. I know what you're asking is, what we would want to do is, because we'll have even more data in a month or so, is if the city does apply for any additional well permits, they will absolutely have a hydrogeologic report to substantiate that as well. His initial modeling, John, and we've talked about this at the city council level. I don't know if we've talked about it here at the district, but it was a maximum withdrawal or production from the western well field of 17 million gallons a day. And then if the Ed Rochelle property is added to that, because we can potentially space our wells out a little further, the total production from both well fields combined would be 26 MGD. So it's 17 plus 9 to get to the 26.
Okay.
And that modeling, so that, and you know this, John, the model, the big caveat there is, he runs models for 30 years. The worst case is 30 years with, consistently 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's worst case. One thing that I can say is, as we bring on new water supplies, the goal is to not to just have groundwater be part of our diversification. It's not to rely on groundwater. We want to be able to monitor and manage our groundwater production, both in San Patricio County and in Nueces County.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going. I mean, that was a good answer there. I would like to see, if we're going to use some of these wells for, a conjunctive use with our surface water systems long term, what could we reliably plan on using? Is it 10 MGD? Is it 5 MGD? Is it, we know that when we get in an emergency period and over the years maintain these wells that you talked about, we have a good source of water there. The Western plus Rochelle, 26 million gallons a day. We may never ever pump that much, given future drought conditions and other sources of water that you bring online. I was just kind of trying to get a handle on how much could we count on long term, and we can discuss that later.
Yeah, I mean, what Steve Young has said is 26 million gallons a day from the Western Wellfield and the Ed Rochelle property. That doesn't mean we would pump 26 million gallons a day, but that was his answer. But the data continues to be refined. The model continues to be refined. It's going to be a great model going forward. I do want to make sure that this district knows, and this is the same thing we told the San Patricio Groundwater Conservation District. You will have access to our monitoring wells at any time. We will have access to the subsidence monitoring locations. All of those resources and assets, my hope is that they're utilized by this district in your management practices. And that sort of piggybacks on what Ms. Shaw said earlier.
Thank you, Nick. Anybody else, any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that concludes the meeting, right? Or do you have anything else, Steve? Or?
Yes, before we conclude, I just want to point out in your packages the dates for the next meeting, and just remind everybody that these are preliminary dates to put out. The next meeting will be for April 16th, 2026. Again, it's subject to change, but we will make sure that the board is aware if there's needed to change that date. We will we'll send out we'll ask the board members if another date would suffice, but you'll receive an email from Belinda or myself asking those questions with communication with y'all. But right now it is set for April 16th. With that, if you have any questions for the team, I'm really happy if not.
I don't have any questions, so I guess we'll adjourn this meeting.